With ship-to-ship docking finally making its way into Star Citizen as of patch 3.13, the Constellation's Merlin can finally be undocked and flown about separately from the main ship. Coupling that with the fact that the SDF shield tech has finally patched holes in its shields, it on paper has the potential of being a solid PvE and PvP multi-crew ship. But that's just it. The Connie has always looked good on paper. In reality, the Connie has always come up short when in combat, being easily outflanked and outdamaged by virtually any serious combat ship in the game. All this despite being called a gunship, at least for the Andromeda variant. But that, as you may find in this video, may have changed as of the recent patch, making it potentially one of the best multi-crew ships in its class for you to turn to when you're trying to keep your cargo safe. Just like another thing that can keep you safe, the sponsor of today's video, NordVPN. They've not only helped me protect my IP from prying eyes when browsing the web, but they've also helped me continue to do my job working remotely from Taiwan, where I couldn't return back to the United States for the first time in my life for over a year due to the current global crisis. NordVPN enabled me to access IP-restricted websites like Home Depot and the IRS to be able to continue to do my work, but they've also let me watch some of my favorite shows from streaming services that just will never be available here in Taiwan. So if you're looking for a VPN service, why not try NordVPN today by going to nordvpn.com/morphologist and use code morphologist to get a 2-year plan plus 1 month at a huge discount. And hey, if it doesn't work for you, you can always get your money back with their 30-day money-back guarantee. So sit back, relax, and let's take another look at the Constellation series and whether or not it actually is good as of 3.13. The long-beleaguered Constellation series has drawn the ire of many Star Citizens for good reason. Not only is the design styling for some ugly, but its handling and ability to take a punch have left much to be desired, which for many is quite frustrating given just how good it looks on paper. It's got 2 size 4 and 2 size 5 hardpoints for the pilot and a huge amount of missiles that come out from retractable missile pods both on its sides and along its spine. Mitigating some of its maneuverability issues, it also has 2 size 3 turrets, each with 2 size 2 weapons. But if that's not enough, it's also got a light fighter attached to its rear, the P-52 or P-72 depending on the variant that you're flying. Little ships that can zip around quicker than most any other in the game and pack a little bit of a punch. But it's also got good versatility with integrated VTOL thrusters capable of keeping it afloat in dense atmosphere and a drop-down cargo bay big enough to carry up to an Ursa-sized rover. So then you can see why that when citizens buy this ship and they find out just how well or actually how poorly it actually performs, people become pretty disappointed. But like I said, 3.13 seems to be changing that in a couple of ways, but I didn't want to just take their word for it. I wanted to test it out in a way where you guys can actually see the improvement for yourself. Just a fair bit of warning here though, the ship has been somewhat problematic in the PTU, which is the public testing universe, which is Star Citizen's alpha of the alpha. It's the place where they test a patch before they allow it to go live into the servers, where you have your own inventory and your money that you've accumulated over the past 1.5 years. So anyway, I ran the Connie through a few different scenarios. First, I flew it myself and saw what it could do in this latest patch, and then I got together with a couple of friends over at the Armco Discord, our community/org. I'll put a link in the description in case you're interested in joining us. And well, here were the results. In terms of maneuverability, the Constellation has seen some improvements in the last few patches, though I still wouldn't put it on par with more maneuverable ships of its size like, say, a Harbinger or a Sentinel from the Vanguard series. Still though, the slight handling improvement has made it much more enjoyable and feasible to fly in PvE missions going all the way up to high threat, though I wouldn't advise taking it up against anything like a Hammerhead, at least on your own, as even though it's been improved and the shields don't have holes in them, it still will not be able to withstand all of that firepower coming from a heavy gunship. Still though, the size 4 weapons that come stock with the Andromeda and the other series in the lineup make it so that you can engage targets pretty far away before they can shoot back. This makes it so that you can quickly get into an area, destroy stuff before they can even damage you, and then get out and go on to the next mission. And if you're comfortable flying with fixed weapons, you can also swap out the 2 top weapons available to the pilot for size 5s, giving you even more range and DPS. And don't forget, you also have missiles to deal with some of the smaller, more frustrating targets you may come up against, like Buccaneers. But what about that newly detachable ship on the back of the Constellation? Would that potentially be a great way to run missions where you've got smaller targets to go up against? That's what I wanted to find out next. And I'm gonna let you guys hear this experience instead of talking over it because the sound effects are pretty cool. Oh, that just sounds so cool to detach from the ship. It really is epic, especially when you're moving. Well, I discovered on this mission that even though it's a pretty nimble little ship that's hard to hit, it doesn't pack enough of a punch to really make an impact on vessels any larger than light ships, which means that it's more of a support ship than it is a 1v1 fighter. You're really going to want to have the support of somebody flying the Connie if you fly this thing around and you're facing anything other than a light fighter like an Arrow or a Gladius. It also, of course, leaves your Constellation unguarded, and if that explodes, well, you're kind of stuck out in the middle of nowhere. So then that just kind of leaves us with this being a fun and immersive experience, but not something that really has any benefit. But what about if you fly with somebody else? When flying with other people, the story really does change. If you got somebody on the guns for the Constellation able to maneuver around and fire missiles and the main weapons while you help them out with your little snub-nosed fighter, it really can turn the tides in a battle against a light ship that can potentially outmaneuver the Constellation on its own. Ships like the Gladius and the Arrow are fast enough that they can constantly get in the blind spot of a Connie. What the P-52 and P-72 do, which is what I'm flying here, is provide you an opportunity to stop that little fighter from getting into that blind spot by constantly contesting it and forcing it to focus on you. While you don't want to fly directly towards any light fighter because the Merlin is ultimately a lot weaker, it is strong enough to actually blow up light vessels pretty readily. It's real strength then that it packs enough of a punch to make a difference, and it's maneuverable enough to mitigate the fact that it's relatively weak with its hull. You can even bolster its strength by equipping a bunch of stealth components, which will make it very hard to detect and lock with missiles, which are ultimately a big threat to a small ship like this. We found that equipping all stealth components dropped down our detectable range to a measly 4.5k, which is pretty impressive. That means that most ships won't see you coming until it's too late. However, there are situations and targets where the Merlin can prove to be somewhat ineffective, especially if the opponent knows exactly what to do. Here we're going up against a Meta Sentinel, which is a heavy fighter that has an EMP. Instead of focusing on me, he instead decided to go directly for the Connie to potentially leave me stranded. And because it's a heavy fighter, I just couldn't do enough damage to provide enough of a threat to him. But this could also come down to my loadout. We discovered that the P-72 could be incredibly effective with 4 size 1 XRJ repeaters, which are, if you don't know, distortion weapons which are capable of disabling a ship's shields and potentially wreaking havoc on their ship's systems. But the downside, of course, being that they don't do any damage to hull, so they would only be providing support for disabling shields, leaving your friend to have to execute on the opening that you create. We did 3 duels with different setups, and in each case the Sentinel always killed the Constellation with a Merlin flying around. There's one other thing though that I should note here that I was not able to try in the P2 that I still need to get going, and that's to have a fully manned Constellation versus a meta target. I wasn't able to get the gunners' positions filled during these duels because we just didn't have enough people, and the P2 was providing way too many issues to reliably get everybody in before the game crashed. We did, however, try a few PvE missions with a full crew, and as you can see, the firepower is pretty ridiculous when you have both the turrets manned. I really do think then that the Constellation stands a really good chance in PvP if it's fully manned and you've got some good gunners, a good pilot, and of course a good support Merlin pilot. Overall then, I think that given enough time and the right kit for the Constellation, the turrets, and its respective P-52 or P-72, that it could pose a real threat against players and NPCs alike. While it can struggle against heavy fighters, I think that this will be somewhat mitigated when the new missile tech comes online later this year, which should make them more reliable and allow you to shoot more at once, making this vessel far more intimidating to come up against, especially at range. I also feel that the Constellation is in a really good spot with its versatility. Because it can do so much, it provides more of a reason to want to have a crew, because it might be that you need those extra people to help escort you on doing ground-based missions where you might run up against other players on the ground with weapons. And as more tech comes online for players, such as the inability to wear anything but a flight suit while piloting, it's going to become more important to have people on call and ready to go, already suited up with heavy armor when you're doing a hot drop into, say, an outpost that you want to take for your org, or one of the missions that you want to complete against NPCs. And that's something that the versatility of the Constellation series can seriously offer. But what about you guys? Has this made the ship more enticing to you? Has it made you want to revisit it after you've shelved it for a while? Let me know down in the comments section below. Also, be sure to let me know if you guys have discovered any really good loadouts for it. And of course, I really encourage you guys to share any experiences you may have had with it in combat as of late. And finally, if you guys are looking for a VPN, don't forget to head on over to nordvpn.com/morphologist and use my code morphologist if you're looking for a VPN. That's it for now, guys. I hope to see you in the next one.